Welcome to our Sound for Video session. Today is the 29th of March, 2018. Today we're going to talk about how to prepare for a location sound job. So if you were hired as the sound mixer for a job, what are some of the things you need to do? Well, let's take a quick look here. So first of all, the goal of today's discussion is we really need to talk about how to get you prepared when you're the location sound mixer and or boom operator. So a lot of times if you're just getting started out, you are going to be both. You're actually going to be everything for sound. And I'm kind of going to focus on that a little bit, but also interested to hear the experience of some of you that have worked on bigger crews and what that experience is like. I've worked on some where we have maybe a crew of 10, but not anything bigger than that. So for me, it's usually a smaller crew. And there's some kind of interesting things that you need to consider when you're working on a smaller crew. Obviously, there are jobs at various levels, but when you're starting out, the trick is that you're going to be working with a director, and hopefully there is a director. A lot of times the director is the director of photography as well, but they're going to need, and this I have to say this very carefully because it's not, I don't want it to come across the wrong way, but sometimes when a director is new, they're going to need some help. They don't know all the things about sound, and so you're going to have to help educate them in a very gentle way that that keeps them very empowered. It keeps them in charge of the shoot and in charge of the production. So it's kind of a fine line, and you have to be very careful there. But a lot of times they don't really know what they need from the sound point of view. So here's some ideas of some questions questions you can ask them or topics you can bring up to discuss with them that will, and again, specifically the director, that will help you prepare for the shoot and also kind of help prepare them for the shoot as well from a sound perspective. Ideally, you'll have this conversation before you've quoted them your kit rental fee. So normally when you hire out for a location sound job, there are two fees that you can bundle them together however you want to do it, but typically there's a day rate or a half day rate. So if it's only a half day shoot, you can charge your half day rate. But there's also a kit rental fee. And the reason for that, the reason you keep that separate typically is that depending on the needs of the production, that can be a much larger cost. And so, that's going to cover things, frankly, even if you own your mixer, which many of us do, and your recorder, there has to be a way to pay for that in addition for you to get paid for your time. So that's really what the kit rental fee is. It's not just for the recorder and mixer. It's also for any wireless you need. It's for any Comtech or wireless headphone sets that you're going to need for the director, for the script supervisor, for whomever else on set needs one. It's for all of these things, and a lot of times you have to rent those things. So for example, if you own maybe 3 channels of wireless and a shoot calls for 5, then you're gonna have to rent 2 channels. And so that's another point really. You need to have this discussion well enough in advance that you can rent them. So for example, if you live in a location that's not Hollywood, that's not Atlanta, that's not New York, or any else around the world where they have the sound rental houses that you can actually make a rental and go and pick it up in person, you're going to need to plan pretty well in advance so that you can rent and they can ship it to you so that you're ready, or, talk to friends, fellow mixers in the area, borrow, rent from them, whatever the case may be. So you're going to need some time. And you're also going to need to know what the production requires so that you know what to include in that kit rental fee. And for me, for example, if I'm bringing everything that I already own and we can cover the production with that, typically my kit rental fee will be around $150 for a day. Use that information as you will. Hopefully that's helpful for you. So first question I would really when I sit down with the director for the first time or talk to them on the phone, is really kind of just tell me about the shoot. What is this all about? What's the main idea? It's a narrative, it's a documentary, it's a human interest piece, whatever it is. And I think just by asking that question, a lot of times you'll be able to elicit things from the director that help give you context and help you already start answering some of the questions about how sound is going to be handled on the production. So you'll get a sense for, kind of the vision, the director's vision for the film, the genre of the film, and you'll actually hopefully be able to pick up some of their preferences. And what I found it's interesting is that on a lot of the smaller productions, the directors are so consumed with all the other things they need to do that their approach is, you sound mixer, Curtis, whomever you are, I trust you and I need you to make all the decisions in relation to sound. And I need you to do a professional job. I need you to get great sound so that we don't have to fight with it in post. And so, it just depends. If you have a more experienced director, they will probably have their preferences. There's some of them that just, they would really just rather have nothing but lavalier mics hidden on the talent somewhere and no booms, because booms just get in the way. They create more problems in terms of, the boom can create shadows on the set and in the frame. And, it's just one more thing to worry about. Booms can sink down into the frame and then you have to reshoot that take potentially. So there are a lot of things. And that's one thing, that's one kind of preference you hear about some directors. Other directors know enough about sound that they generally will prefer to have you both boom and lav or wireless radio mic all of the talent, because they recognize that sometimes, and actually oftentimes, you can get a better sound with a boom mic. So just asking that question can start to elicit these types of things that you can then start to understand, so you can work well with your director and make sure you get them what they want. Another thing that should happen pretty early in the conversation is, would it be okay if I got a copy of the script? And there are several reasons for this. Not only can you assess from that what you're going to need in the audio kit, because you'll know what the maximum number of actors are that will be mic'd in any one scene, for example. Or you may know, based on, if you don't know, maybe you know some of the blocking as well, and so you're going to know, hey, we're actually going to need 2 boom microphones in this particular scene, or we're going to have a sit-down interview, and so we're going to need 2 static booms that we can put on Sentry stands, or whatever it is. Having that can be really helpful. Now, obviously, if it's a documentary or it's a human interest piece or an interview, you're not going to have a script. But there still will be some other things that come along with that. Another reason for, and I'll get to those in just a second, another reason that it's good to have a script, if there is one, if it's a narrative piece, is that also, if you're operating a boom, having that script and kind of having a pretty good handle on it in terms of who's talking at what time helps a lot with cueing the boom mic. So you'll know, you'll be able to anticipate, because you know that the lines are, when it's time to cue to the other actor. And that's critical as well to getting a really good sound on your boom mic. So another thing to consider. A little later in the conversation, you'll start talking about call sheets and schedules and scripts and things of that nature. Actually, we already talked about script, but what's a call sheet? If you have never seen one before, here is an example of one. I had to kind of sterilize this a little bit so I didn't give away personal information. But this is one that was sent to me as when I was a location sound mixer for a job we did recently with my friend Jacob Fenn. And of course, he has the different scenes and the sets. It has the cast right here, all of their call times, where they're supposed to meet. Likewise for the rest of the crew, all of our call times and where we're supposed to meet and when, things of that nature. It even has information like sunrise and sunset. Talks a little here about, breakfast and lunch, weather forecast, things of that nature. So it really kind of gives you the context. Now, what I can't show you in this one, and there was also a schedule, there was also a gear list. And in this particular case, I was contributing some of the gear. I was renting out essentially some of the gear to the production. So I had some lights that I brought, in addition to some other things, some batteries and things of that nature. So you'll get all of that type of stuff. On here, there was also a pretty extensive, because there was a zombie vibe to this. Well, it was kind of an apocalypse piece. So there was an extensive section here for the hair and makeup as well. And so it just depends on the production, but ideally you'll be working in productions where they will have done all of this planning beforehand, because otherwise, with very inexperienced directors, sometimes you'll find that they'll have in their mind, at worst, what they're going to do throughout the day, and they haven't necessarily shared that with everyone. And so if you get a crew, you can see here there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 crew here, essentially, 4 actors, plus there were some other people that were doing production assistants type work at the studio. That some of them were up at this abandoned house and at the ruins. And so there were all these different places we went. And so it's just a lot to keep track of. And having it written down and ready to go ahead of time makes a huge, huge difference. So, that if you don't get something like this, if this is not discussed or even brought up, that gives you a clue as to what type of production you're getting yourself involved in. Ideally, there should be this much planning. So let's head back over here. Of course, if you don't have all that information up front, or if you're still just talking to the director about the potential of doing this work for them, another thing you'll want to kind of find out is the maximum number of wireless you're going to need in any one scene, because that's going to define how many wireless microphone systems you're going to need to bring with you to the shoot. Ideally, you'll have at least one backup as well. And then also the maximum number of booms. If you haven't seen the script yet, or if there is no script, understanding those things ahead of time can make it's critical. You have to know. Otherwise, you're going to show up and you're going to be a disappointment to the director because you're not prepared. So definitely things you need to understand. Also, time code. You're going to want to talk a little bit about their post workflow and find out if they plan to use time code. If they do, how many cameras are going to be that you need to prepare for. Also, what types of cameras they are, so you know what type of time code input they have, so that you can get the appropriate cables for that as well. So all critical things there. From my point of view, the slating is really, especially on the smaller productions, not so much, maybe it's different on the bigger productions, I don't know, but on the smaller productions, really bringing a slate is the sound guy's responsibility. So if you don't own a slate, it's a really good investment. I'll put a link for one that's just like $35 below. Just a very simple slate, and then you'll want some dry erase markers that you'll bring along with that. And this is interesting, again, when you're getting started and you're working on these smaller productions, you may have to stand up a little bit. You don't have to be pushy. You don't have to be rude. You don't have to be, annoying about this. But I have worked on some productions where they just started shooting and they weren't using any slate. And I'm like, hey, I went and talked to the director and said, hey, I can get a slate here in 10 seconds. I've got it just over my bag here. I think it'll help save a lot of time in post. Do you want me to go grab that? And, the director said, yeah, you're right. We should be doing that, because otherwise it's, it could save us in post. If it won't sync automatically using Pluralize or whatever they were planning on using, having a slate is going to be kind of your backup there. So also time code slates, a lot more expensive. Those are about $1,500. So if they are planning on doing time code and they also want a time code slate, you got to know that up front. I don't own one of those, so I would have to rent one if that ever came up. It hasn't come up yet, but if it did, again, critical to know that up front so you can be prepared. Another good question to ask is whether or not they expect you to send sound to camera. And if they do they need that wireless or wired? In other words, can you be kind of tethered to the camera? Are they okay with that? Is that going to work okay in terms of the types of scenes they're shooting? Are they going to have a walking, talking kind of scene? That's going to be kind of a little tricky. It's doable wired to a camera, but that gets a little bit more complicated. If someone falls, then you could pull the camera down too. It just gets kind of messy. So if it needs to be wireless, you're going to have the gear for that as well, to get a wireless hop from your mixer recorder over to the camera. So definitely all things, again, you need to know so you can prepare in terms of gear. Also, do you need wireless sound feeds? That is CommTech for you or anyone else in the crew, and if so, how many? This is actually one where I had kind of an embarrassing experience where it was a very last-minute job, and all of the communication actually went through the DP, and he called me. He's a friend of mine. He was really great to get me involved in the shoot, and it was actually a really fun shoot, a really cool one-day shoot, but the producer didn't talk to him and give any real information that my friend could pass on to me, except that there were going to be two people talking at any given time, at the most. And so I was prepared for that, no problem in terms of wireless mics and a boom pole, or a boom mic. But what they didn't say is that I would also need CommTech, because you're going to be 4 producers on set, which is crazy. It's kind of funny to have a small shoot like that and have, actually was it 4? It was actually 3 producers and a director. And the director didn't care about having Comtech, and that's a wireless mic, wireless headphones where they can hear what I'm recording on my mixer. But the producer came walking over to me halfway through the first scene and said, "Hey, can we get some wireless headphones? A couple of the producers are here." And I was like, "I'm sorry, I don't have any." And it's just a really awkward kind of thing. But if you can have that conversation again up front, then you can have that worked out and be ready for that as well. So there are some ideas of some questions to ask and to talk about with your director when you do take on a location sound mixing job. I know a lot of you out there actually have experience working on other crews, in some cases much larger crews, and so we'd love to hear your comments down below of the other types of things you like to talk about with the director before you get started on a location sound job. Hope you're getting out there and making some great sound. We'll talk to you again next week.